welcome to the first part of the ICD-9 tutorial. We've been doing a few medical terminology, assuming you went through the medical terminology courses. If you haven't, take a look at it. I'm not sure specifically where you are in terms of where and what you need. You may not need medical terminology, so you can probably proceed right ahead. But in case you do, again, I definitely recommend you go back and review the videos, look at the quizzes, do the quizzes, don't just look at them, because that will be, well, yeah, so do them. Alright, anyway, so what we're going to do now is we're going to work on some ICD-9. It's going to be a tutorial, but ICD-9 itself is very, very long, so even a tutorial should take us quite a bit of time. So let's get going. Alright, so ICD-9, first of all, what does it stand for? It stands for International Classification of Diseases. And this is nice since we're still using the 9th edition in the United States, and oftentimes you see CM. CM signifying that is a clinical modification, meaning that there's a oh, there you go. You didn't have to type that, everything is right here. Anyway, ICD-9, International Classification of Diseases, clinical modification. Clinical modification because it has a well, we're going to learn a few things, because it's not just used for the classification of disease and illness, or illness and death, but also for purpose of research, statistical data, and so on and so forth. Alright, so let's keep moving. So again, what is the purpose when it comes to in terms of coding? As far as the book itself goes, it's obviously used for many things, but as far as coding goes, what is the purpose for us? Well, essentially it's translation of written description of disease, illness, injuries, symptoms, diagnosis, and so on and so forth into numbers, because numbers are easy to categorize, easy to work with. Instead of having a very long name, long title, you can have a very simple code. Let's say 250 point something something, signifying diabetes with a manifestation of let's say neurological manifestation or something like that. All right, so you can truly simplify a disease without having to go ridiculously into each individual term or each individual word within a disease. So that's, for us, that's the whole thing. It simplifies life for us, right? Now, what is the core purpose of ICD-9? Essentially, it's there to classify morbidity and mortality, right? Essentially, disease and death, right? That is the core of ICD-9, right? And eventually, ICD-10 once we start using it, right? So let's go over some of the simple items. What is the current use? Again, as far as coding goes, it helps to standardize the classification of diseases. All right. By standardize, what I mean is, let's say for instance we say 042 is for HIV. As far as we're concerned, that means whether you're in North Jersey, whether you're in South Jersey, whether in New York, whether you're in California, Connecticut, whether you're in, it doesn't matter, as long as you're in the continental U.S. 042 means HIV. That means that each individual insurance company recognizes 042 as HIV. When you do data construction, that means 042 is for HIV. That essentially means 042 means the same to every single person. There's a standard. Alright, so if I call here, I don't have to argue over what one code means or what a disease is, because we all agree that this disease means that. Alright, so you build a standard. Building a standard makes for easy collection of data, right? As I've just mentioned, it's easy in every single state, it's easy in every single country. Well, once all countries are using the same data, of course. But as long as we all use the same data and we all represent 042 as being HIV, that confirm HIV, I should say. That means we all agree to one item, and it works out much easier for everybody, right? Which means you also save time, and when you save time, you maximize your reimbursement, right? Essentially, your payment, whatever is due to you, you make more money in the grand scheme of things, all right? And as I mentioned before, it's also used for research, right? It can help keep healthcare costs down, right? Essentially, we can see what is working and what is not working. What are some of the common treatments that are being used for particular diseases, and are those particular diagnoses, and are those things working or are they not working? All right, so it has a pretty um, extensive list of important uses aside from just the classification of disease and death. All right. So, what are the origins of ICD-9 or ICD-10, as we will be eventually getting into? Um, it is said that the Greeks, as far as we know, were the first to truly group data by diseases. All right. So, you know, back in ancient times, typically when people died, the idea was that they died of witchcraft or they died of bad sin, something that was just usually some sort of external force. Right? The idea of microbes wasn't truly accepted yet. Nowhere near accepted yet. But eventually, we got closer and closer. In the 1600s, Captain John, as you can see here, Captain John, not Captain Morgan, Captain John. He published the London Bills of Mortality. Basically, what he's trying to do is attempting to study diseases, right, in a statistical manner. He was trying to see what people were dying from, and how many people died from this disease and that disease and so on and so forth. And the idea just kind of kept going and going up to, let's say, about the late 1900, when Jacques Bertillon developed the Bertillon classification of cause of disease, cause of death. Eventually, this was adopted by the American Public Health Association. Excuse me. And what it did was it decided to revise this on a yearly basis. So eventually, you had ICD-9. All right, so it was revised all the way up to the 1970s, and then um, it, as far as we know, the new one just didn't come in the United States for many reasons. One of the reasons being that ICD-9, all the codes are tied in directly to Medicare reimbursement, and of course, Medicare is the largest payer of health insurance in the United States. So it takes a while to kind of go through all the bureaucratic stuff, and mostly politics, and getting things together, getting paperwork together, making sure that you can the codes in the new one also go back and can have an affiliation with the codes in the old one. Basically, what it called crosswalking. Basically, be able to link the codes from the back and forth. Um, Obviously, for data purposes, if you use, let's say, if, open up an empty one here. Let's say, for instance, we decide that 042 was indeed HIV, but we didn't recognize, we didn't have an equivalent code that will go back to HIV in the new, let's say for ICD-9, but we didn't have an equivalent code for 042 for HIV and ICD-10. Well, that would be a statistical nightmare, because how do you compare an old HIV to the new HIV and vice versa? So all those things kind of contribute to why it took a while, right? So in the late 70s, again, that's when the last revision of ICD-9 occurred, and again, this is where it became more of a clinical tool, more than just classification of death. All right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to end it here. We're going to continue more, and I will see you in the next video.